The screen on my phone froze. Red numbers glared back at me. $157,342 in credit card debt across 8 cards. 8 cards that Logan, the successful orthopedic surgeon, had somehow maxed out. 8 cards that were now simultaneously sending me notifications of missed payments. The screen on my phone froze. Red numbers glared back at me. $157,342. I set the phone face down on my executive desk and tried to steady my breathing. The world outside my office window showed Nashville's Music Row continuing its normal rhythm while my life imploded. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. 41 years old and I'd destroyed everything I'd built. The knock on my door startled me. "Dr. Logan? Your 3 o'clock consultation is waiting." My receptionist's voice was chipper, unaware that her employer was financially ruined. 5 minutes, I called back, voice steady despite the chaos inside. I opened my desk drawer where 3 more credit denial letters sat. The emergency loan application I'd submitted last night had already been rejected. "Your credit score is insufficient for approval at this time." My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Still on for dinner tonight? I made reservations at the Continental Midtown. Can't wait to see you." Victoria Bronson, the pharmaceutical sales rep I'd been dating for 4 months. Beautiful, successful, and completely unaware that her surgeon boyfriend was drowning in debt. I'd been taking her to expensive restaurants twice a week, buying her designer gifts, maintaining the facade of the successful doctor she thought she was dating. I typed back. "Looking forward to it." Another lie. I couldn't afford dinner at the Continental, but I couldn't afford to lose Victoria either. She represented everything I wanted to be put together, confident, financially secure. Breaking up with her would mean admitting my failure. I stood and straightened my tie. Armani, purchased last week when I already knew I couldn't afford it. The shopping bags still littered my condo floor. Designer suits hung in my closet with tags attached, watches I'd never worn. Electronics still in boxes. The evidence of my addiction surrounded me everywhere. Numbers don't lie. That's what made this moment so horrifying. As a surgeon, I lived by metrics, by precise measurements and calculated risks. Now the metrics showed complete financial destruction. Bankruptcy wasn't a possibility, it was inevitable. "Dr. Logan?" "They're getting impatient," came another knock. I pushed it all down. Compartmentalization was my specialty. "Coming right now," I responded, slipping my white coat over my shoulders. I'd thrown myself into more surgeries, more consultations, more hours at the hospital. If I could just work harder, bill more hours, take on more patients, I could outrun this disaster. That evening, I arrived home late again. Kinsley, my teenage daughter, sat at our granite counter with homework spread before her. Since her mother left us when she was 8, it had been just the 2 of us navigating life together. "Dad, can you help me with this biology?" she asked without looking up. "Not tonight, Kins. I've got charts to review." Another lie. I had creditors to dodge and a dinner with Victoria to prepare for. Her face fell. "You always say that now." "I'm busy saving lives. That's what surgeons do." The edge in my voice made her flinch. "Remember when we used to spend time together before bed?" Kinsley asked softly. "Why don't we do that anymore?" The question hit like a physical blow. When had I stopped spending time with my kid? When had I replaced family time with shopping sprees and expensive dates? When had I started filling the void with possessions and relationships instead of my daughter or my faith? "We'll spend time this weekend," I promised emptily. "I just need to get through this busy period at work." An hour later, I was at the Continental, watching Victoria scan the wine menu with practiced ease. Her black dress probably cost more than most people's rent, but she wore it effortlessly. Everything about her screamed success, from her perfect manicure to her Cartier watch. "You seem distracted tonight," she said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "Everything okay? Just thinking about a complex case," I replied, the lie sliding out smoothly. I'd become an expert at deception. "Tell me about your day." As Victoria talked about her pharmaceutical conference in Chicago, I calculated the cost of our evening. Dinner would run at least $200. The bottle of wine she'd ordered was $85. The parking valet expected a tip. Money I didn't have for a relationship I couldn't afford to lose. "Logan, I've been thinking," Victoria said as we waited for dessert. "My company is looking for an orthopedic consultant for our new sports medicine line. The compensation would be substantial, 6 figures for minimal time commitment." My heart leaped. "Tell me more." It's mostly advisory work. A few meetings, some marketing consultations. The kind of thing that would be perfect for someone with your reputation." She smiled. "I might have mentioned your name to my regional director." For the first time in weeks I felt hope. 6 figures would solve my immediate problems. I could pay down the credit cards, catch up on my mortgage, maybe even take Victoria on the European vacation she'd been hinting about. "That sounds incredible," I said, reaching for her hand. "Thank you for thinking of me." Later that night, alone in my study, I found myself online shopping again. The promise of Victoria's consulting opportunity had given me permission to spend. Just a few things to celebrate. A new watch to wear to the pharmaceutical meetings. A suit that would project the right image. Designer shoes that communicated success. 3 hours and $8,750 later, I closed my laptop with satisfaction. Tomorrow's deliveries would arrive discreetly at my office, away from Kinsley's increasingly concerned gaze. My phone buzzed with a text from my college friend Philip. "Hey man, noticed you missed another poker night? Everything cool? The guys are asking about you." I'd been avoiding my usual friend group for months. Our weekly poker games at the country club had become too expensive, not because of the stakes but because of the expectation to buy rounds of top-shelf whiskey and expensive cigars. These were successful men. Lawyers, business owners, other doctors, who could afford the lifestyle I was pretending to maintain. Just swamped with work. I texted back. "Rain check?" The truth was more complicated. Philip and the others represented a social circle I couldn't afford to lose but couldn't afford to maintain. They knew me as successful Dr. Logan, the guy who always picked up the check, who wore designer clothes like uniforms, who dated beautiful women and lived in the right neighborhood. If they discovered my financial reality, I'd lose more than friends. I'd lose my professional network, my referral sources, my entire social identity. In Nashville's tight medical community, reputation was everything. The next morning brought devastating news. Victoria called, her voice tight with disappointment. "Logan, I'm so sorry. The consulting position fell through. The company decided to go with someone from their existing network." The floor dropped out from under me. The solution I'd counted on, the lifeline I'd already spent against, was gone. Worse, I'd maxed out another credit card celebrating a job that didn't exist. "These things happen," I said, trying to sound philosophical while my world crumbled. "Thanks for trying." "Actually," Victoria continued, "there's something else I need to tell you. I've been offered a position in Los Angeles. It's a huge promotion, but it would mean relocating next month." Another blow. Victoria wasn't just my girlfriend, she was my connection to a world where I felt successful, sophisticated, worthy. Without her, I'd be alone with my addiction and my mounting debt. "Congratulations," I managed, "that sounds like an amazing opportunity." "I was hoping you might consider coming with me," she said softly. "We could start fresh in LA, you could build a practice there." The offer was tempting, a chance to escape Nashville's financial pressures, to reinvent myself somewhere new. But starting over would require money I didn't have, and LA's cost of living would only amplify my problems. "Let me think about it," I said, buying time I couldn't afford. That afternoon I received the call I'd been dreading. The hospital administrator needed to see me immediately. When I arrived at his office, the concern on his face was unmistakable. "Logan, we need to discuss the irregularities in your department's expense account," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. "There are charges here that don't match any approved procedures or equipment purchases." My mouth went dry. I'd borrowed from the orthopedic department's account 3 times, fully intending to replace the money before anyone noticed. The amounts weren't large, $3,000 here, $5,000 there, but they were clearly visible to anyone reviewing the books. "I can explain," I started, though I had no reasonable explanation. "Logan, this is serious. We're talking about potential criminal charges. At minimum, your medical privileges are suspended pending a full investigation." The words hit like physical blows. My career. The foundation of my identity was crumbling. Without hospital privileges, I couldn't perform surgeries. Without surgeries, I had no income. Without income, the house of cards would collapse completely. "How long do I have?" I asked. "The board meets Monday. I'd suggest you consult with an attorney." I drove home in a daze, my mind racing through impossible calculations. Even if I somehow survived the hospital investigation, Victoria was leaving, my friends would discover my deception, and Kinsley would learn that her father was a fraud. That evening, my daughter found me sitting in my home office, surrounded by financial documents and legal papers. "Dad." "What's all this?" she asked, her voice small and worried. I looked up at Kinsley, really looked at her for the first time in months. When had she gotten so thin? When had those worry lines appeared around her eyes? How long had she been carrying the weight of my problems without me noticing? "We need to talk," I said, gesturing for her to sit down. What followed was the most difficult conversation of my life. I told her everything: the debt, the shopping addiction, the hospital investigation, Victoria's departure. I watched my daughter's face transform from confusion to shock to something resembling grief. "How bad is it?" she asked finally. "We might lose the house," I admitted. "I've destroyed everything." To my amazement, Kinsley didn't cry or rage or blame me. Instead, she reached across the desk and took my hand. "Dad, I don't care about the house or the cars or any of that stuff," she said quietly. "I just want my dad back. The one who used to read me stories and help with homework. You've been gone for so long even when you were here." Her words broke something inside me that had been carefully constructed over years of professional success and material accumulation. I realized I'd been trying to fill a void with things and relationships and achievements, but the void had only grown larger. That night after Kinsley had gone to bed, I strode into my closet, surrounded by evidence of my addiction. Designer clothes with tags still attached, shoes never worn, watches still in boxes. The material wealth was suffocating, yet I felt completely empty. I fell to my knees among the worthless treasures. Not in prayer. I didn't know how to pray authentically, but in surrender to the reality that I could not fix this problem. My professional expertise, analytical mind, and independent spirit had all failed me. The next morning brought more devastating news. Victoria had accepted the LA position and would be leaving immediately. "I can't wait for you to figure your life out," she said during our final phone call. "I need stability, Logan. Something you obviously can't provide." The irony was ironic. I'd lost the woman I thought completed me because I couldn't maintain the facade that had attracted her in the first place. Later that day, Philip showed up at my office unannounced. "Bro, what's really going on?" he asked, closing the door behind him. "The rumor mill is saying you're in some kind of trouble with administration." I looked at my oldest friend in Nashville, the guy who'd introduced me to the poker group, who'd vouched for me at the country club, who thought he knew successful Dr. Logan. The temptation to lie was overwhelming. Instead, I told him the truth. Philip listened without judgment as I confessed my shopping addiction, my financial ruin, my suspended hospital privileges. When I finished, he sat quietly for a long moment. "Man, I had no idea," he said finally. "You always seemed to have it so together." "That was the problem," I replied. "I was so busy looking successful that I forgot how to actually live." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I've tried everything I can think of. Worked more hours, opened more credit cards, borrowed against everything I own. Nothing works because the problem isn't financial, it's deeper than that." Philip leaned forward. "You remember my brother Derek? The one who went through rehab for gambling?" I nodded. "He's been clean for 3 years now. Goes to some kind of support group. Found religion completely turned his life around. Maybe you should talk to him?" The suggestion felt foreign. I'd built my career on scientific evidence and measurable outcomes. Support groups and religion seemed like crutches for people who couldn't solve their own problems. But I had no other options. That Sunday, for the first time in years, I went to church. Not the prestigious downtown congregation where Nashville's medical elite made appearances, but a small community church where Derek had invited me to join him. The pastor, a man named Jacob, spoke about the rich young ruler who couldn't give up his possessions to follow Jesus. "Some of y'all got so much stuff that Jesus can't even get in your house," he said with a knowing smile. "Your closets are full but your spirits are empty." I felt exposed, as if he were speaking directly to me. When he invited people forward for prayer, I walked down the aisle for the first time since childhood. "I've made such a mess," I whispered to Pastor Jacob. "Brother," he said, placing gentle hands on my shoulders. "That's exactly where Jesus meets us, in our messes, in our failures. When we finally stop trying to save ourselves." Over the following weeks, I had to face the practical consequences of my choices. The hospital board placed me on permanent administrative leave pending criminal charges. The mortgage company began foreclosure proceedings. Victoria left for Los Angeles without looking back. I started attending Derek's support group, learning to identify the emotional triggers that drove my spending. I began to understand that I'd been trying to purchase worth, status, love, things that can't be bought. Most importantly, I rediscovered my relationship with Kinsley. Without the pressure of maintaining my image. Without the distraction of expensive dates and shopping binges, I was finally present for my daughter. We talked about her fears, her dreams, her anger at how I'd neglected her while chasing material success. "I never needed the fancy house or expensive clothes," she told me one evening as we shared a simple dinner. "I just needed you to see me." 6 months later, we moved into a modest home across town. I took a position at a community clinic, making a fraction of my previous salary but finding more satisfaction in serving patients who truly needed help. The designer clothes were sold to pay debts. The watches went to a collector who offered fair market value. The hardest part was letting go of the image I'd carefully constructed. Philip and the poker group gradually faded from my life as I could no longer afford their lifestyle. Some former colleagues avoided me, uncomfortable with my fall from professional grace. But new relationships emerged, built on authenticity rather than appearances. The men in my support group became genuine friends, people who knew my struggles and accepted me anyway. My relationship with Kinsley deepened as I learned to be emotionally present rather than just financially providing. The legal charges were eventually reduced to restitution payments, a consequence I accepted with gratitude rather than resentment. The monthly payments to the hospital would take years to complete, but they represented something more valuable than money: the restoration of integrity. Most surprisingly, I discovered a new world in Jesus. Sure, I knew God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. That was Sunday School 101 stuff. But he's so much more. My peace, prosperity, healer, righteousness. There's so much more to living in Jesus than I ever suspected. Before every consultation with a client, I pray and invite Jesus into the conversation. I won't give a diagnosis without discussing it with the great physician who knows everything. Just knowing he's with me fills me with such joy. Work is no longer stressful. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Pastor Jacob reminded me during a particularly difficult week when temptation felt overwhelming. God doesn't want your perfection, Logan, he wants your heart. Today, 3 years into recovery, I no longer struggle with the urge to purchase validation. A hunger to know more of Jesus replaced whatever triggered that need. I am complete in Christ. Kinsley is a senior in high school now, planning for college with scholarships she earned through academic excellence rather than her father's checkbook. She speaks proudly of her dad, the community clinic doctor, the man who chose recovery over reputation, substance over appearance. "You're more successful now than you ever were before," she told me recently. "I'm so proud of who you are. I've learned that true success can't be measured in possessions or professional achievements. It's found in the quiet moments of genuine connection with Christ. Seeing him as the center of my life. Knowing that it's in him that I live, move, and have my being. I rejoice in knowing my sins are forgiven." The most unexpected blessing has been the opportunity to counsel other professionals facing similar struggles. Nashville's success stories often hide similar pain. The emptiness that success can't fill. The validation we seek through possessions. "No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind," I tell them, sharing 1 Corinthians 10:13. "And God is faithful, he will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out." For me, the way out wasn't through greater self-control or better management techniques, it was through surrender, admitting I couldn't save myself. Jesus met me in that place of complete bankruptcy, financial and spiritual, and began a reconstruction more precise than any surgery I've performed. I still count things, but now I count differently. Days of sobriety instead of acquisitions. Moments of genuine connection instead of networking opportunities. Blessings instead of possessions. And in this new economy of grace, I'm finally learning what true wealth means.